The medical ship called Gentle Dawn floated dead in space, surrounded by broken pieces of what used to be a living world ambassador. Cirith pressed her 4 hands against the cold metal wall and watched the life support numbers fall lower and lower. She was a Valorian, a tall and thin being with skin that glowed with soft blue light when she was healthy. But now that light flickered weakly like a candle about to die. 47 of her crew were still alive, huddled together in the cargo bay where they had gathered the last of their breathable air. They had come to this system to save refugees from the Dominion attack. But they had arrived too late. Dominion was an empire that spread across hundreds of worlds, and they believed that kindness was stupidity and mercy was a disease. They had destroyed the colony below and left the Gentle Dawn crippled and drifting. The distress beacon had been sending its cry for help. For 6 days now, nobody was coming. The Galactic Council, that grand assembly of powerful species who claimed to keep peace in the galaxy, had declared this sector too dangerous for rescue missions. The Valorians understood why nobody would risk their lives for them. Their species had given up warfare 3,000 years ago. They had no soldiers, no weapons, no warships. They had dedicated their entire civilization to medicine and healing. They had helped countless species across the galaxy, curing plagues and treating wounds and asking for nothing in return. But helpers do not have military. Allies healers do not have armies rushing to save them. Cirith looked at her dying crew and felt the weight of her failure crushing her chest. Then the sensors made a small sound. Something was approaching. Cirith moved to the control panel with the last of her strength and saw a tiny vessel emerging from behind a shattered moon. It was barely bigger than a shuttle, old and beaten and covered with patches where repairs had been made dozens of times. On its side was painted a crude image of a blue and green sphere. She did not recognize the symbol. Communication system crackled with static, and then a voice came through, rough and tired but somehow warm. "This is Captain Marcus Chun of the independent salvage vessel Second Chance, and I am calling the Valorian ship because I picked up your distress signal, and I want to know if you need help." A human. Cirith had read about humans in the cultural databases. They were a young species, only 300 years into space travel. The council considered them primitive and unimportant. They had no seats in the great assemblies, no voice in galactic politics. They were nobodies, but this nobody had come. "We are dying," Cirith transmitted back, too exhausted to be formal. "Our life support is failing, and we have 47 survivors, and the Dominion patrols are sweeping this sector." There was a pause. She expected the human to apologize and leave instead. His voice came back steady and calm. "I have a hidden base in the asteroid field about 2 hours from here, and my ship is small, but I can fit maybe 4 or 5 of your people at a time. So if we work fast, I think I can get everyone out before the patrols find us." "You would risk your life for strangers you have never met?" Cirith asked. "Lady, I have been doing salvage work in dangerous space for 15 years, and I have seen too many good people die because nobody bothered to help them. And I decided a long time ago that I would not be the kind of person who flies away from someone in trouble." Over the next 18 hours, Marcus Chun flew his tiny ship back and forth between the Gentle Dawn and his hidden base. 11 trips in total each time he returned, his ship groaning and shaking from the strain. And each time he loaded more Valorians into his cramped cargo space and spoke to them in his rough but gentle voice. He gave them water from his own supplies. He wrapped the injured in his own blankets. He told them jokes that did not translate well, but somehow made them feel less afraid on the final trip. With Cirith herself aboard, the moment they all feared arrived, the Dominion interceptor detected them. The warship was sleek and fast and armed with weapons that could vaporize the Second Chance in a single shot. Marcus Chen did not panic. pushed his old ship into the asteroid field at speeds that should have torn them. Sarith gripped her seat as rocks flew past the window so close. She could see the cracks in their surfaces. The humans' hands moved across the controls like they were part of his own body. He knew this asteroid field. He had mapped it himself over years of salvage work. He used that knowledge now to stay alive. 2 hours they played this deadly game, ducking and weaving through spinning rocks while the Dominion ship tried to get a clear shot. Finally, they reached the jump point, a small tear in space that led to safer territory, but the second chance could not fit through with the interceptor so close behind. Dominion ship would follow them and find the other survivors. Marcus Chun made his choice. Ambassador, I am going to drop you here at the jump point, and then I am going to lead that ship away from you. They will catch you. Cirrus said, probably yes. They will kill you. Almost certainly yes. Why would you do this for us? Marcus Chun turned to look at her with tired brown eyes that held no fear. Only a strange kind of peace, because 47 lives matter more than one, and because someone has to be willing to pay the price for doing the right thing, and because I would rather die knowing I helped than live knowing I ran away. He opened the airlock and guided her to the escape pod. Get your people home, Ambassador, and tell them what happened here, and tell them that humans pay their debts. The pod launched and Cirith watched through the small window as the second chance turned and flew directly at the Dominion interceptor. The human ship dodged and weaved for another hour, leading the enemy away from the jump point, buying time with every second of his remaining life. Then the Dominion caught him. The transmission they intercepted was short. Marcus Chun refused to give up any information about the Valorians, refused to beg for his life. His last recorded words were, I regret nothing. They executed him within the hour. His body was never recovered. Scythe returned to her homeworld carrying 46 survivors, a story that would change history, and a promise she did not yet fully understand, but she would spend the rest of her life making sure that every Valorian knew the name Marcus Chun, and she would teach them what humans meant when they said they pay their debts. 20 years passed, and the galaxy continued to spin in its slow, endless dance around the great dark center. Humanity kept growing in the quiet corners of space, building mining colonies on worthless rocks and frontier outposts in sectors that the greater powers did not want. They remained unimportant in the eyes of the Galactic Council delegates. From powerful species would sometimes see humans at trade stations and shake their heads at these primitive creatures who bred too fast and died too young and seemed to have no understanding of their proper place in the universe. But the Valorians remembered Cirith had risen to become elder physician of the High Medical Collegium, the most respected position in all of Valorian society. She had used her influence to ensure that the story of Marcus Chun was taught to every child on every Valorian world. His face was carved into the memorial of benefactors, a sacred wall that held the images of beings who had shaped Valorian history across 10,000 years. He was the first human to ever appear there, was the first being added in over 300 years. The Valorians did not simply remember Marcus Chun as a historical figure, they remembered him as a debt unpaid. When human ships arrived at Valorian space stations, strange things began to happen. Docking fees were waived. Poor authorities would smile and wave the humans through without inspection. Medical facilities would offer free treatment to any human crew member, no matter how minor or serious their condition. Human cargo received priority processing, and human merchants found themselves given the best trading positions. At first the humans were confused. A freighter captain named Rodriguez docked at Valoria Prime with a shipment of industrial equipment and found himself treated like visiting royalty. I do not understand, he said to the Valorian administrator, who personally escorted him through the station. We are just haulers running cargo between colonies, and nobody treats us like this anywhere else. The administrator, a young Valorian whose skin glowed a healthy blue, looked at him with 4 eyes full of warmth. "You are human," she said simply. "Yes, but what does that matter?" "Because we remember." She would not explain further when Rodriguez returned to human space and told this story. Other captains began to share similar experiences all across Valorian territory. Humans were being treated with extraordinary kindness. The reason was always the same: because we remember. The Galactic Council noticed this strange friendship developing between 2 minor species and found it amusing. Let the primitives play at diplomacy. They said it changes nothing of importance. Then the Theta Cygni plague struck. It began on a small human colony world called New Melbourne, a hemorrhagic fever that caused victims to bleed from every opening in their bodies before dying and screaming. Any human medicine could not treat it. Human doctors did not even understand how it spread. Within weeks it had jumped to 3 other colonies. Within months, it threatened to spread across all of human space. Millions were dying, millions more would follow. The humans sent desperate requests for help to every species they could contact. The responses were polite refusals. The plague was too dangerous. Human space was too far away. Resources could not be spared for such a minor species. Then the Valorian medical fleet arrived, 17 ships carrying the finest physicians and researchers in Valorian society. They had left the moment they heard about the plague, racing across space at maximum speed without waiting for permission from any authority elder. Sirith herself led the mission despite being over 90 years old. When the human authorities tried to warn her about the danger, she simply smiled with her 4 eyes and said, "You think we would abandon you now?" The Valorians worked day and night. They developed treatments that stopped the bleeding. They created vaccines that prevented new infections. They trained human doctors in techniques that would protect colonies for generations to come. 17 million humans survived because of what the Valorians did. When it was over, the human government tried to negotiate compensation. They offered trade agreements and resources and anything else they could think of. Elder Sirith refused it all. "We pay our debts," she said. "One man saved 47 of us, and we have much further to go before we are even." The human ambassador was a woman named Catherine Wells, and she had tears in her eyes as she listened. "You have saved millions of our people," she said. "How can you say you still owe us?" "Because Marcus Chun did not save us expecting anything in return," Sirith replied. "He saved us because it was right. And we will help you because it is right. And we will keep helping you until the stars themselves burn out, because that is what his sacrifice deserves. We cannot accept such a gift without giving something back. Then give something back by being worthy of it. By being the species Marcus Chen believed you could be. By showing the galaxy what humans truly are." Catherine Wells returned to Earth and told this story to everyone who would listen. She told them about a salvage captain who died for strangers. She told them about a species that remembered a single act of kindness for 20 years and counting. She told them about a debt that the Valorians insisted on repaying no matter how many times humans said it was already settled. The story spread across human space like fire. Marcus Chen became a legend. His name was given to ships and stations and children. His image was painted on walls and printed on flags. Humans began to think differently about themselves. They had always known they were small and weak in a galaxy of ancient powers. But now they knew something else too. They knew that even the smallest kindness could echo across the stars. They knew that even the youngest species could matter. And they knew that debts, once incurred, must be honored no matter the cost. The Galactic Council continued to watch this friendship between minor species and continued to think it was meaningless. They were very wrong, but it would take another 30 years before they understood just how wrong they were. The Dominion had grown fat on conquest. 50 years after the destruction of the Gentle Dawn, they had swallowed 17 species completely. erasing their cultures and histories, and even their genetic lines from existence. 42. Other species lived under their brutal rule, serving as slaves and resources for the ever-hungry empire, the Galactic Council. Watched this happen and did nothing except issue formal condemnations that the Dominion ignored. The truth was that the Council needed the Dominion. They served as a useful barrier against the chaos of the Outer Rim territories. They kept the dangerous parts of the galaxy contained. They were simply too powerful to challenge without risking everything, so the Council made deals and signed treaties and pretended not to notice the screaming of conquered peoples. When the Dominion announced their intention to absorb Valoria, the Council debated for 3 standard weeks. The Valorians had friends among the Council species. Their medical expertise had saved countless lives across thousands of worlds. Surely, someone would stand up for them. The final vote was unanimous intervention. Would be strategically inadvisable. The Valorians received this news with the quiet dignity that defined their species. They had no military. They had no weapons. They had no warships. They had only their hospitals and research stations and peaceful cities, where they had spent 3,000 years learning to heal instead of harm. The Dominion gave them 4 days to surrender unconditionally. After surrender would come mass sterilization of the population. This was standard Dominion protocol. They did not want conquered species to breed resistance. They wanted to erase the Valorians from the future entirely. Elder Cirith was 112 years old now. Frail and weak but still sharp in her mind, she gathered the leaders of Valoria in the great hall of the Medical Collegium and told them to prepare for the end. "We will not fight," she said, "because fighting is not who we are, but we will also not surrender our dignity. And we will face whatever comes with our heads held high." The younger Valorians wept. The older ones simply held each other and remembered better Dason. The second day of the countdown, the sensors detected something strange. Ships were emerging from jump space at the edge of the Valorian system. Many ships, so many ships that the sensors could not count them all at first. The Dominion fleet commander laughed when he saw the readings. Pathetic. He transmitted to his officers. Some fool species has decided to throw their lives away for these healers. Then the identification signals came through, and his laughter stopped humans. The ships were human, but this was not a military fleet in any traditional sense. There were converted freighters with weapons welded onto their hulls. There were mining vessels carrying modified drilling lasers. There were private warships belonging to corporations and mercenary companies. There were colonial defense ships that had been designed to fight pirates, not empires. There were thousands upon thousands of small fighters piloted by volunteers who had left their families and jobs and lives behind to answer a call. 200,000 vessels in total. Nearly 1 million humans. At the front of this ragged armada flew a battered cruiser with the name Chun's Promise painted on its hull. Its commander was Admiral Sarah Chun, granddaughter of a salvage captain who had died 50 years ago, saving 47 strangers. She had grown up on the stories. She had dedicated her life to the dream, and when the call went out across human space that Valoria was about to burn, she had been the first to answer. "Attention, Dominion forces." She broadcast on all frequencies. "The Valorian people are under human protection as of this moment, and you will withdraw your fleet immediately, or we will demonstrate why the galaxy should have paid more attention to our species." The Dominion commander responded with contempt. "You outnumber us with garbage ships and untrained crews, and our technology is centuries beyond yours, and you will die screaming for this insult." "Perhaps," Admiral Chun replied, "but we will not die running, and you will learn today what humans are willing to sacrifice for those who showed us kindness." The battle began. The Dominion ships were faster and stronger, and their weapons could destroy human vessels with single shots, but there were so many human ships, they came in waves, filling the void with metal and fire and stubborn refusal to give up. When human ships were crippled, They did not retreat. They turned their dying vessels toward Dominion carriers and accelerated when human fighters ran out of ammunition. They used their ships as weapons. When human captains knew they were about to die, they transmitted one final message. For Chun, for Valoria, for the debt we owe. The battle lasted 9 hours. The Valorians watched from their planet's surface with 4 eyes, full of tears, as strangers gave their lives for them. 60,000 human ships were destroyed, nearly 200,000. Humans died in the cold, dark void above Valoria, but they did not break. They did not run. They fought with a fury that the Dominion had never seen in all their years of conquest. Species were supposed to calculate odds and retreat when victory became impossible. Species were supposed to value survival above all else. Humans did not seem to understand these rules. They attacked again and again, filling every gap in their lines with fresh volunteers, spending their lives like currency to buy time and space and hope. When the battle finally ended, Dominion fleet was not merely defeated, it was gone. The survivors fled so fast they left their wounded behind. They left their damaged ships behind. They left everything behind in their desperate need to escape from these insane creatures who simply would not stop. Admiral Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of her damaged ship and looked out at the debris field that had been a battle. She thought about her grandfather. She thought about 47 Valorians saved by one man in a tiny ship. She thought about debts and payment and what it meant to be worthy of the sacrifices made by those who came before. Grandfather, she whispered, I hope we made you proud on the surface of Valoria. Elder Sirith fell to her knees and wept. She wept for the humans who had died. She wept for the kindness that had saved her people twice. Now she wept because she finally understood what Marcus Chun had meant all those years ago. Humans pay their debts, and their payment echoes across worlds. 30 years after the Battle of Valoria, the Dominion no longer existed. The war had not been quick. The war had not been easy. Humanity lost 17 colony worlds in the fighting. They lost millions of soldiers and sailors and pilots. They lost friends and families and pieces of themselves that could never be recovered. They learned the terrible mathematics of galactic warfare, where victories were measured in acceptable casualties and defeats were measured in extinction events. But they never forgot why they were fighting. Every human soldier carried a small metal chip on a chain around their neck. On that chip were names. The names of beings across the galaxy who had shown humanity kindness over the centuries. Marcus Chen was on every list. First and foremost, Elder Sirith was on every list too. She had spent her final years serving as an advisor to human commanders, teaching them Valorian philosophy so they would not lose themselves in the violence. You must remember who you are, she told Admiral Chun shortly before dying peacefully at the age of 116. Your grandfather did not die so that you could become monsters, and mercy is not weakness. And the measure of your species will be what you do when you have finally won. Admiral Chun carried those words with her through every battle. When the Dominion's final stronghold fell, humanity held the power to do what the Dominion had done to so many others. They could have ordered extinction. They could have erased the Dominion species from existence. They could have made certain that no threat would ever rise from those worlds. Again, the voices calling for total destruction were loud, and many humanity had suffered too much. They had buried too many of their own. The temptation to end the threat forever was almost overwhelming. Admiral Sarah Chun was old now, gray-haired and scarred and carrying the weight of 30 years of war on her shoulders, stood on the bridge of her flagship above the Dominion homeworld and listened to her officers debate. We cannot let them rebuild, one admiral argued. They will come for us again the moment they are strong enough. The galaxy will understand if we finish this, another said. After everything they did, nobody would blame us. Chum listened to it all, and then she raised her hand for silence. I am going to tell you a story, she said. A story about a man in a tiny ship who found some strangers dying in space. He could have flown away. He could have decided that the risk was too great. He could have calculated the odds and concluded that his life was worth more than theirs. But he did not do any of those things. Instead, he made 11 trips through dangerous space to save 47 people he had never met. And when it became clear that he would have to die to give them a chance to escape, he did not hesitate. He gave everything he had because that is what kind of person he chose to be. I am his granddaughter. I grew up on stories about what he did, and I spent my whole life trying to be worthy of his sacrifice. If we destroy the Dominion now, if we commit genocide because it is convenient, then we spit on everything he believed in. We become exactly what he died fighting against. And I will not allow that. I will not let us become monsters just because we are afraid. The bridge fell silent then. One by one, our officers nodded humanity, established rehabilitation worlds for the Dominion survivors. They offered amnesty to those who surrendered and agreed to live under new laws. They treated prisoners according to standards that mystified their allies and outraged their own people. The Dominion's former supreme commander was brought before Admiral Chun in chains, and he looked at her with genuine confusion in his eyes. Why? He asked. We would have destroyed you if we had won, and we would have enjoyed it. So why do you show us mercy we never would have shown you? Admiral Chun looked at him with something that might have been pity, because someone once helped us when we were weak. She said, a species called the Valorians repaid a single act of kindness with 50 years of friendship and support, and they taught us what it means to honor a debt. We owe debts to the dead now. We owe debts to all the species who stood beside us. We owe debts to the future that we want to build, and we pay those debts by becoming what those who sacrificed for us believed we could be. The former Supreme Commander did not understand. He had been raised to believe that power was everything and mercy was stupidity. He would die in prison years later, still not understanding. But the galaxy understood. The Galactic Council formally offered humanity a seat among the great powers. Humanity declined. Instead, they proposed something different. A new alliance built not on politics or power, but on a simple principle. Help those who need it. Remember those who help you. And never forget that small kindnesses can echo across worlds and centuries. They called it the Chung Compact on the day it was signed. Representatives from 300 species gathered on Valoriath. Great Hall was full of beings of every shape and size and color, united by a shared belief in something bigger than themselves. In the center of the hall stood a monument. It was a battered old salvage ship, carefully reconstructed from records and memories, with a blue and green sphere painted on its hull. The plaque beneath it read simply, "One man, one choice, one act of kindness. This is how civilizations are built." Elder Sirith's great-granddaughter placed her four-handed blessing upon it, while Admiral Chun's great-grandson stood beside her. They represented species who had been strangers once. Now they were family outside the hall. Across the galaxy, beings of every kind looked up at the stars and thought about the lesson humanity had taught them. All kindness is never wasted. Debts are always paid, and the echo of one good deed can change the shape of everything that follows. 100 years after Marcus Chun died alone in a tiny ship, his name was spoken with reverence on 10,000 worlds. His story was taught to children who would never see Earth. His sacrifice had grown into something that would outlast stars, and somewhere, in whatever place good souls go when their work is done, a tired salvage captain smiled and knew that it had all been worth it, because humans never overlook a favor, and their payback echoes across worlds. The Galactic Council erupted into chaos when news of the Battle of Valoria reached the great assembly halls. The Dominion demanded immediate sanctions against humanity. They called the human action unprovoked aggression. They called it piracy on a galactic scale. They called it a violation of every treaty and agreement that governed civilized Species, the Dominion ambassador, a massive creature covered in armored plates, stood before the council and pointed one clawed hand at the human observer in the gallery. These primitives have committed an act of war against a sovereign empire, and they must be punished or the order of this galaxy will collapse. The human observer was a young diplomat named James Okonkwo, and he did not flinch. The Dominion was about to commit genocide against a peaceful species, he said calmly. We stopped them, and we would do it again tomorrow if we had to. You have no standing to interfere in Dominion affairs. We have no standing to sit by while innocents are murdered either. And we chose action over cowardice. The Council, prepared to vote on sanctions, the major powers had already made their calculations. Humanity was small and unimportant. The Dominion was large and dangerous. The smart move was obvious. Then something unexpected happened. The Keth ambassador rose from her seat. The Keth were an insectoid species with compound eyes and clicking mandibles, and they had never shown any particular interest in humanity. Before this council votes, she said, I have something to say about humans. She told a story 40 years ago. A Keth colony ship had suffered catastrophic engine failure in deep space. They had drifted for weeks, slowly dying until a human mining crew found them. The humans had shared their own air and food and fuel. They had towed the Keth ship to safety at great risk to their own lives. They had asked for nothing in return. When I asked the human captain why he helped us, the Keth ambassador said, he told me that where he came from people helped each other, and he could not imagine doing anything else. She sat down, and the Strak ambassador rose. The Strak were serpentine beings who usually kept to themselves and rarely spoke in council sessions. He told his own story. 20 years ago, a Strak ambassador had collapsed during a diplomatic conference from a rare genetic condition. A human doctor attending the conference had worked through the night to stabilize him using techniques improvised from human medical knowledge. The doctor had refused payment. She told me that helping was its own reward, the Strak ambassador said. I did not understand at the time, but I understand now, one by one. Other species rose to speak. The Mallory told of human engineers who had stabilized their dying moon. The Vreem told of human traders who had delivered medicine to a plague-stricken colony without asking for compensation. The Torath told of human soldiers who had protected their pilgrims from raiders. In the outer territories, dozens of species, hundreds of incidents, small kindnesses that have been given freely by humans who simply saw someone in need and decided to help. The council chamber fell silent as the weight of these stories settled over the assembly. The Keth ambassador rose again. The Dominion asks us to punish humanity for defending the innocent, she said. I say instead that we should be ashamed that we did not defend the innocent ourselves. And I say that we have debts of our own to pay. The Keth will not support sanctions against humanity. The Keth will instead open full diplomatic relations with human space. The Keth will stand beside those who helped us when we needed it. The Strak ambassador joined them, the Melarithan, the Vrenthan, species after species, rising from their seats to stand with humanity. The Dominion ambassador screamed about treaties and order and consequences. Nobody listened anymore. Within a single year, the galaxy had transformed. Trade agreements with the Dominion were cancelled across half of civilized space borders were close to Dominion ships. Intelligence about Dominion military movements was shared freely with human commanders. Technology that had been hoarded for centuries was offered to human scientists and humanity. Still without a seat on the council, still officially classified as a minor primitive species. had become the center of an alliance that spanned a quarter of the galaxy. The Dominion raged, they sent threatening messages, they postured and blustered, and promised terrible revenge, and humanity responded in a way that terrified them more than any threat could. Humanity started preparing the ragged fleet that had defended Valoria. Had been assembled in weeks from whatever ships could be gathered. It had been a desperate improvisation held together by courage and luck. What came next was different human shipyards began building warships designed from the ground up for combat. Human colonies began training professional soldiers using techniques refined over centuries of warfare on their homeworld. Human scientists began adapting the technology shared by their grateful allies, combining it with human innovation in ways that nobody had predicted. Admiral Sarah-chan gave a speech that was broadcast to every corner of civilized space. "You showed us who you are," she said, looking directly at whatever Dominion spies might be watching. "You showed us that you will destroy anyone weaker than you. And you showed us that the galaxy needs someone willing to stand against you. We spent decades being the galaxy's helpful neighbors, asking for nothing, expecting nothing. Now we are going to be something else. Now we are going to be the reckoning that the Dominion deserves, not for conquest, not for power, but because there are others out there like the Valorians, peaceful peoples who will be destroyed unless someone protects them. And humanity has decided that someone will be us." Elder Sirith watched this broadcast from her home on Valoria and smiled. With all four of her eyes, she was 113 years old now. She did not have much time left, but she had lived long enough to see the seeds planted by one kind man grow into something that would change the galaxy forever. Marcus Chun had saved 47 Valorian. Shis legacy would save billions.